At this juncture in our program, I'm going to directly go to our dear, respected, beloved brother, Brother Muhammad Shiddu. Brother Muhammad Shiddu is originally from Egypt. He comes from a family with a Sufi, or should we say spiritual, tradition that goes back many centuries. Brother Shiddu became a student of Faizani International about 10 years ago. He was first introduced to the school in Chicago, where he continues to live. Professionally, Brother Muhammad is an IT product manager at one of America's largest healthcare companies. In his spare time, Brother Muhammad is an online content creator with an Arabic-speaking following exceeding 500,000 people. Jazakallah khair. He will speak to us today or tonight about the leadership today's Muslims need. Also, I would like to add that Brother Muhammad, with his blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gifted him with his language of Arabic, he's also translating Allama Sayyid Faizani's books and teachings into Arabic, alhamdulillah. Jazakumullahu khairan kathira.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much, Brother Hasib, for the kind introduction. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk to this beautiful gathering, alhamdulillah. So as Brother Hasib mentioned, I live in Chicago right now, and that's where I met the Faizani community about 9 years ago. So one thing I would like to start with is knowing this community for 9 years now, and families, parents and children. One thing I always think when I see this beautiful community is, this is just such an amazing community, and especially in the Chicago community, we have people from very diverse backgrounds. So we have, some of our friends come from Albania, Turkey, Pakistan, India, Egypt, myself, some actual American, American raised and born. So all this, this diversity and this community lives, and have a beautiful friendship and beautiful relationship. So when I see this community, I say to myself, this is such a wonderful Muslim community, right? Why can't we have this on a larger scale? What's wrong? What's going on? We have so many Muslim nations. Each country has its own richness, its own qualities. From the Arab countries where I come from, Afghanistan and all the Arab, so much, intellectual power, a lot of good things. So why is it that we're in such a backward state with all these, all these good qualities that we see in people? So that's what leads me to today's, topic that I would like to talk about, and it's about leadership. Why can't we become better with all the qualities that we have? It's because we don't have the right leadership as Muslims. That's my thought. So today I would like to talk about what is the kind of leadership that we need as Muslims to bring this change and to have, the reality that we long for. And I am sure all Muslims, long for this beautiful change and reality. So let's start by defining leadership. What is leadership? And I think leadership is mostly about making an impact, introducing change. That's what leadership is. For example, if you just manage the status quo, if you keep things as is, you're not a leader. You're just maybe a good manager. But leaders, they make a change. And to be honest, leadership could actually be negative or positive. So negative leadership, for example, look at someone like Hitler. He made a huge impact, but very negative impact. So that's one side of leadership. But there's also positive leadership. Of course, the greatest example of positive leadership is Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. 1400 years after he came, his leadership continues to influence all over the world. So that's, the greatest leadership ever. And even, for example, Maulana Faizani, he lived how many decades ago? We wouldn't be here today without him. And sometimes I even think, when I feel grateful for the community and the beautiful brothers and sisters that I know, without Maulana Faizani, we wouldn't even have known each other. So that's a leadership that has an impact that continues for decades. And that reminds me also of the beautiful verse, سَنَكْتُبُ مَا قَدَّمُوا وَآثَارَهُم. Allah says, we will write what you have done and all the consequences, right? So that's something that continues on and on. So that's the leadership. So now I would like to bring up a famous saying. You probably all heard it. There are three types of people: people that make things happen, people that watch things happen, and people that wonder what happened. And unfortunately, Muslim nations are mostly from the third category. They wonder what happened. And some of them at best watch what happened, but we never make things happen in today's reality. So how can we change this negative state into a positive one? Sound leadership. I think that's really the only answer. So if sound leadership is the answer, so let's understand the importance of leadership. One example I thought about, the beginning of Islam. So as we all know the story, the Prophet ﷺ and his Sahaba, they lived in Mecca, persecuted. They couldn't go anywhere, right? The Prophet tried and they were persecuted. The only thing that gave Islam life was moving to Medina. That's where they were able to establish their community. They were able to grow. So if the Prophet ﷺ hadn't moved to Medina, Islam wouldn't maybe have lived until today. So if you look at the origins of this migration to Medina, interestingly, it was because of the seek of leadership. How is that? So why did the Medina people invite the Prophet to go? They actually had two tribes and they were always in conflict, always fighting. And just life wasn't working anymore. I mean, they live in the same, let's say the same country or the same city. And all this infighting was just causing them to, just be in an awkward state. So they realized, which is, here's the secret. They realized that they need sound leadership. And they were seeking, for this leadership. And that's how they accepted the Prophet. They did the bay'ah, not only because of the religion, by the way. They needed someone to create peace in their community. And that's the leadership that the Prophet ﷺ provided. This will tell us that the seek of the act of searching for sound leadership is the seed of the Islamic civilization. That's what actually made Islam live on. So that's just the importance of just the desire for sound leadership. So because the reality is, what happened is the Prophet ﷺ, when he went to Medina, he really made a positive change, because leadership could either destroy a nation, that's a corrupt leadership, or it can keep a nation from destruction when it's a sound leadership. So the Prophet leadership kept these tribes from destruction. And one thing also I can mention here, after the Prophet, the Khulafa al-Rashidin, I remember one story of when Abu Bakr was the Khalifa, and so much turmoil happened after the Prophet died, and people started leaving Islam and refusing to pay zakat and all this. And the way Abu Bakr managed this situation made Sayyidina Umar at one time, he was kissing his head and he said, without you, we would perish. Without your leadership, we would have perished. So that's the leadership of Abu Bakr, alayhi salam, radiallahu anhu, that without also his leadership, Islam wouldn't have lived until today. So the leadership of the Prophet and then the leadership of all the Khulafa al-Rashidin. So now we know leadership is important. We know it made a big difference. It actually gave birth to Islam. So I wanted to think about the qualities of sound leadership. How can we tell who is a sound leader, who is a good leader? And I thought of, as I kept thinking, we're not going to say all of it, but the key characteristics of sound leadership. And to be honest, I started with 6, and then I thought of a 7th one, so I ended up with 7 qualities. And then I thought, the number 7 has secrets, right? Because there are 7 skies and there are as-sab'u al-mathani. Who knows? But I came up with 7 qualities of sound leadership. And so let's review these together, inshallah. So the first quality of sound leadership is honesty. And I would quote Maulana Faizani when he says, he in the temporary program, where I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with it, he mentions the third category of a good Muslim, and why they just spend their life, just sacrifice everything for the sake of Allah. He concludes that they do all of this because the Islamic society is left behind from every perspective. So that's honesty, that's honest leadership. Because if you are a leader, you have to recognize the actual issues with your community. And even in the Quran, and very interestingly also, if you look at the story of the prophets in the Quran, you will notice that these prophets were very, they were very critical of their people. They don't come and say, you guys are great, you have very nice qualities. No, they would tell them all the bad things about them. This is what you do wrong. This is what, like, for example, the Prophet ﷺ came in the Arab nation. Arabs were known for some good qualities. They were very hospitable, right? They are very generous. But the Quran doesn't say you guys are great. It says you guys do that and do all the bad things. And all the prophets that came, if you look in the Quran, that's what they do. They point out the wrong things to them very honestly, very openly, because that's the only way to change for the better. So honesty is the first quality of a sound leader, of sound leadership. The second quality is competence, right? If you are leading, you have to have the skills and the ability to do it. And that again reminds me of Surah Yusuf alayhi salam, Prophet Yusuf, when he came out, we all know the story again. And then he asked the king to appoint him, over the stores of the land, like of all the crops. Why? He said, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال اجعلني على خزائن الأرض إني حفيظ عليم. So he said to the king, make me, give me authority over the treasures of the land, because I am Hafiz Alim. I am someone with, I know, I remember everything. I'm very knowledgeable. I'm Alim. This is competency, skills. So Prophet Yunus alayhi salam was saying, I have the skills, the qualities that would qualify me for such position. So it's not only about honesty, you have to have the competence for this kind of position. And even, thinking of Maulana Faizani's school, for example, we all know it's a zikr and fikr. So why zikr and fikr? Because it creates mastery, right? Mastery of spiritual and material aspects. So this school also is trying to create competent people that can be leaders. And even, speaking of fikr, for example, it's really, it was at the origin of the early Muslim advancements, right? When the Muslims, they excelled in sciences and all this, is because they really did fikr very well. The third quality of sound leadership is selflessness. I think that's very clear. A sound leader cannot work for their own personal gain. Even, in the West, we call it the conflict of interest. If you are a leader, that means you should be working for the benefit of your people. So if you are working for yourself, that's conflict of interest, right? And obviously, we all know how the reality is in our countries and in our Muslim nations. That's a rare commodity, to have leaders that don't have any, they don't work for their personal gain, right? That's not common. And that's one of the reasons, of all the problems that we have. Because, that leaders that seek personal benefit, they will always fail their people. You cannot reconcile the two, right? You cannot work for yourself and for your people at the same time. And again, looking at the example of Maulana Faizani, for example, obviously he wasn't working for his personal gain. He went to prison many times. While in prison, he just kept writing books. Why do you even, you're already being tortured, you're in prison, and you care about the future, you're trying to write books for people. So obviously there is no self-interest here. So that's a quality of sound leadership as well. So the fourth quality also that's key is humbleness. And that's really closely related to selflessness as well. Because, if you think about it, you are either a humble person or you are ego-serving. That's why humbleness is important, because it means that you're not serving your own ego. So what's the result of humbleness? For example, the result is you listen to the best opinion. It's not only your opinion. Like Fir'aun, Fir'aun said, in the Quran says, what I say is what you have to do, right? My opinion is really the ultimate thing. So that's Pharaoh, right? But a humble leader will listen to everyone around him. They will pick, the best advice that they can do. And even the Prophet ﷺ did that. And so many stories where, for example, the Prophet had a plan, during one of the wars. And then one of the Sahaba asked him, "Oh Prophet, is this a revelation or is it just your planning?" So the Prophet said, "No, it's my planning. It's not a revelation." So the Sahaba said, well, there is a better plan. So the Prophet immediately accepted and changed his plan because someone else, suggested something. Not only that, another thing that, that was the result of one of the Prophet's followers' advice was the trench. We all know the story of the trench. It was Muslims would have been completely exterminated. They were in Medina, a lot of tribes gathered around them. And then Salman al-Farisi, right? He's the one that suggested the idea of the trench, building a trench about Medina, which the Arabs didn't know back then. It was something, completely foreign to the... And they did it. And that's how they saved Medina, and Islam again continued to live on. So that's because the Prophet ﷺ, he was a humble leader. It's not just, I'm the only one that knows. No, I will listen to the advice of everyone else, if they have good advice. The fifth quality of sound leadership is having a vision and a mission. So a mission meaning that, you have a mission, you have a goal, and nothing distracts you from it. So that's why the Prophet ﷺ also, when, they offered him you're gonna be the king of the Medina and all this, and we know the story, he told his uncle, they put the sun in my hand and the moon is in my left hand. To leave this, I'm not gonna leave it. He has a mission, that's it. And also about the vision. So a mission that now we know it, but what is a vision? A vision is something that inspires people of a better future. And again, there are many stories in the Prophet's life where, for example, again, back to the story of the trench. So again, the story of the trench, I don't want to go into details, but what happened is, just try to imagine the situation. The Muslims, they all gathered around the Medina in the trench. They left their families behind, and they knew that their families, their kids, and their wives, they could be completely, all of them killed if the other tribes could get into Medina, right? It was a very bad situation, and they didn't know what was going to happen. In the middle of this situation, the Prophet ﷺ said something also very, very inspiring. So he was, like breaking some rocks, and there is a spark that came out, and he told his companions, "In this spark, I saw you owning the throne of Persia," right? So Persia was one of the greatest powers back then. So imagine these people were in their weakest moment. They don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And they're the Prophet who they believe. He's telling them, you guys are going to own, the greatest powers of your time. So I guess that this gave them, that inspired them, that's the vision. He has a vision, and this vision gives hope to his followers. And also, the vision of Maulana Faizani, for example, a school of monotheism that produced people that at least do not do harm if they do not benefit people. We know the definition of school. And, this is amazing, because if you have people that don't cause harm, maybe half of the world problems will be gone, right? Because half of the world's problems are people that intentionally cause harm. So this school that Maulana Faizani envisioned, just would really resolve most of humanity's problems. The sixth quality is the creation of unity. A leader is someone that creates unity, not division. A sound leader, again, we're talking about sound leadership. A bad leader is someone who creates division. That's, I think, one other sign that tells you what a sound leader is. And the last one, the seventh one, is a sound leader is a builder of people. Because of all the above, honesty and humbleness and all this, and selflessness, you are building the people around you. That's the quality of a leader. It's like a coach bringing out the best in everyone. And one example here, and again, we're all familiar with it, but I would like to mention Maulana Faizani's example of building people, right? The school of thought that one of his key works is the temporary program. So how do you build people, Maulana Faizani? So he says there are 3 kinds of people. I want you to build you into one of them. The first kind is you are a person who doesn't cause harm, as we said. Second, you are a person that helps as much as you possibly can, and even a little bit more. And third, now he's talking about the true sound leaders. Your whole life is dedicated to the mission, to improving the lives of people, and economic and spiritual and intellectual and everything. So that's the building of people, as we see it, for example, in the school of thought of Maulana Faizani. And also not only that, because the education of the heart, this is what also builds people, because when you work on your heart, pure the school, and you purify yourself, and you master your shaitan instead of your shaitan mastering you, all this builds you as a human being. So again, this school of thought is building people. So again, the quality is you are a people builder if you are a sound leader. And even Imam Ghazali, Abu Hamid Ghazali, he spoke about, for example, the heart as the leader and all the limbs in the body as the soldiers. That's the when he spoke about the importance of the heart, for example. So now, now we understand a little bit about the definition and the qualities of sound leadership. So what should we do, right, as Muslims now? So I think the first thing, logically, we have to seek sound leadership. We have to accept only sound leadership. We should not submit ourselves to corrupt leadership. That's very common sense, but we have to keep it in mind, right? And that's when we say leadership, that means leadership in government, in politics, in the mosque, in the community, all the places where there is leadership, we have to focus on these qualities and just only look for the sound leaders. And it's easy. So based on this, when you look at someone who's claiming to be a leader, are they humble, right? Are they how do they treat their inferiors, for example? Are they self-serving or not? Do they seek self-gain? Do they respect knowledge and the expertise of others? Are they open to ideas and feedback from others, and so on? Do they allow others and encourage them to develop and grow, or are they only focused on their own growth? And so all these, look for the 7 qualities that we mentioned. We have to look for these qualities. But lastly, there also must be something for that we have to do on an individual basis, and I'm going to conclude with that. How can we apply the same to our own behavior wherever we have authority? Few of us will be political leaders. Maybe more of us will be like business owners, managers, and the majority of us at least will be parents. And as the Prophet said, كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته, which means leadership. Every one of you is a shepherd, and you are responsible and accountable for those that you have authority over, which means you are a leader in some capacity. And so let's take the example of a parent and try to apply these 7 characteristics of a sound leader. So knowing you are a parent, a mother or a father, you are the leader of a family. How do you apply these 7 qualities to be a sound leader? Honesty. For example, we'll mention one hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. We probably all know it. When he was sitting next to a woman, she had a little kid. He's not listening. She told him, "Come and I will give you some sweets." So the Prophet asked her, "Do you really have sweets for him, or you're just lying to him so that he will listen to you?" No, she said, "Yes, I do have. I'm gonna give him some treat." He said, "Okay, because if you didn't, that would be a lie. You cannot lie to a child just to make them." So that's honesty. That's honest leadership. And second thing, as a parent leader, you have to be competent. Competence. I mean, how is that? Are you parenting by accident, just like that, or are you trying to benefit from all the research that's available now about the psychology and how to raise kids? You have a lot of information available. So why don't you use it to be a competent leader parent? The second quality that we spoke about is selflessness. And that may be natural for many parents. You're not really in it for yourself. You're in it for your kids. But it's not always the case, right? Because some parents actually do see their kids as assets. I want to have kids so that when I grow up, they take care of me, for example. That's not selflessness. That's actually there's self-gain, personal gain in there. Or you want to brag about them. I want my children to be doctors and engineers so that I'm going to say, oh, my son is. So it's actually ego serving. You're not really selfless. You are working for your own benefit, even if it's a little bit subtle. The fourth one is humbleness, meaning how can you be a humble leader with your kids? Are you always right? Can you say sorry when you do something to your kid? Or it's just you cannot, as a parent, say sorry to your kid if you do something wrong? I mean, you have to be humble also, and they're going to learn that from you. And the fifth quality, vision and mission. Do you have a clear goal for your kids? What values do you want to enforce in them? What is your mission as a parent? Do you really have a mission as a parent, or is it just all like, just day by day and that's it? You go through the motions. So that's not leadership. And the following quality was unity also. Even as a parent, you have to do that, because we see some parents, for example, that would favor one kid over the other, and that creates division within the family. Imagine, when this happens and just it's a mess in a family. So again, as a parent leader, you create unity within the family. And seventh quality, people builder. We said, the seventh quality of a leader, they build people. So are you a coach to your kid? Or again, you're just giving an order-giving boss. You're just ordering them around and you're not really building them. So as a parent leader, you have to build your kids, not just boss them around. So in summary, to conclude, we should seek and accept sound leadership only. The search or the quest for sound leadership is what made Islam alive today. That's what brought the Prophet to Medina. So that means once we as Muslim nations realize this and seek sound leadership, I think maybe that will change things, for the better. And we should also develop these leadership qualities in our own selves, as we said, whether you are a parent, you're a manager, you're whatever role you're in, you have some authority over something. كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. Again, and we remember the verse that I mentioned, سنكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم. We will write everything that they do and all the consequences of what they said, what they did. So we have to develop these qualities also in ourselves to be hopefully sound leaders, inshallah. And I'll stop here. Jazakumullah for listening. And thank you so much.
I would like to thank Brother Mohammed for taking the time off his busy schedule to be here with us tonight. And thank you so much for the inspiring speech. همان گونه که سایر فرهیختگان اشاره فرمودند، علامه فیضانی از طریق تفکر و جمال شناسی به مدارج عالی عرفان و خداشناسی رسیده است که این شیوه یکی از ثمربخشترین و پسندیده ترین بخش مکتب عرفان است. این شخصیت علاوه بر عارف بودنش یک گمشده دارد که این گمشده عدالت اجتماعی است. شعری از سعدی داریم و بعد مهمان بعدی ما را دعوت میکنیم روی استیج. پیش ما رسم شکستن نبود عهد وفا را، اله اله تو فراموش مکن صحبت ما را. قیمت عشق نداند قدم صدق ندارد، سست عهدی که تحمل نکند بار جفا را. گر مخیر بکنندم به قیامت که چه خواهی، دوست ما را و همه نعمت فردوس شما را. گر سرم می رود از عهد تو سرباز نپیچم، تا بگویند پس از من که به سر برد وفا را. و حال از در این قسمت برنامه از جناب سید نصرت الله حامد، یک تن از گردانندگان برنامه وزین اسرار معرفت، مقیم کانادا و همچنان مسئول بخش مؤسسه پارل در کانادا که کارهای عمده و خدمات اجتماعی و احداث زیر ساختهای صحی مانند شفاخانه ها و کلینیک ها را در افغانستان عزیز عهده‌دار است و همچنان مسئول بخش دعوت در کمیته فرهنگی کانون علامه فیضانی در کانادا تقاضامند هستیم تا به جایگاه تشریف آورده و سخنان خویش را پیرامون کنفرانس امشب بیان دارند.
امتحان پاک مردان از بلاست، تشنگان را تشنه کردن رواست. درگذر مثل کلیم از رود نیل، سوی آتش گام زن مثل خلیل. نغمه مردی که دارد بوی دوست، ملت را میبرد تا کوی دوست. نخست از همه مهمانان عزیز، گرانمایه و دوستان ما، فرهنگ مداران ما که از جاهای مختلف در اینجا حضور به هم رساندن، همگیشون را من خیر مقدم میگم. امیدوار هستم چنان که تا به حال در این محفل شکوهمند و خجسته روحی، معنوی، علمی و عرفانی شما تشریف داشتین، خود ما احساس کردیم با قلب خود که اندوخته های را و تحایف ذی قیمتی را با خود گرفتیم و انشاءالله با خود به خانه میبریم. چون وقت شده، ما مطلبی را با خود نگاشته بودم پیرامون یکی از واژه ها که صلح، اتفاق و آزادی است از اون منصرف میشم. فقط 4 موضوع را مختصرا ارائه میکنم که در قسمت صحبت استاد گرانمایه که کردن و برداشتی که من خودم از این مکتب جهانی داشتم با شما دوستا و عزیزا شریک می‌سازم. خدمتی را که علامه فیضانی نه تنها برای افغانها، برای مسلمانها، بلکه برای بشریت کرده، برای موجودی که به نام انسان است و فقط من حیث انسان در آثار علامه فیضانی مطرح شده و با معرفی گرفته شده. انسان کیست؟ انسان کیست؟ انسان کیست؟ بدون همه تبعیض و محدودیت. امی انسان را چون از 2 بود ساخته شده، بود مادی و بود معنوی. بود معنوی انسان که گوشت و پوست و استخوانش است و این ضرورت داره به خاطر خورد و نوش و آنچه که ما میپوشیم وقتی گرمی باشه یا سردی باشه. این چونین بوددگی که بودن از او باعث حیات ما شده، او عبارت از معنویت یا روح است. او هم به خود تغذیه ضرورت داره. از طریق تغذیه از او ما صاحب حال میشیم، ما صاحب مقام شامخ انسانیت میشیم. پس به این خاطر که در این عصری که نهایت عصر اشتغالات و مصروفیت هاست، هر کسی با تحصیل، با بزنس، با تجارت، با مصروفیت های مختلف دست و گریبان است. در این عصر، نابغه عصر ما که علامه صاحب فیضانی است، نهایت دلسوزی کرده و بر ما فرمول هایی که از قرآن عظیمشان استخراج شده، فرمول هایی که واقعا زودرس است، واقعا عملی کردن از او خیلی ها آسان است و برای ما آنچنان تغذیه معنوی میکنه که ما مثل که از نگاه ظاهر آنچه که میخوریم و مینوشیم، قبل از اینکه گرسنه بودیم، بعد از اینکه نان را صرف کردیم احساس سیری میکنیم. در این فرمول ها هم ما امو احساس را میکنیم و شایستگی و برازندگی در این فرمول ها ایست که علامه صاحب ایره از معدن قرآن عظیمشان استخراج کرده. 2 فرمول ذکر و فرمول فکر. فرمول ذکر که تکیه میکنه با 45 آیت در قرآن عظیمشان که ثبوت فرضیتش هم او است و فضیلتش هم در روی ثابت میشه. و فرمول تفکر که بخش عمده قرآن عظیمشان را به خود اختصاص داده، عبارت از 2500 آیت است. این 2 فرمول بهترین نوع غذا برای روح انسان میشه، برای معنویت انسان میشه. و چون علامه صاحب وظیفه و رسالت و واجبه قرآنی داشتن که چگونه اتم انسان را، مثل که انشتین اتم را تجزیه و تحلیل کرد به ذرات دیگه، علامه صاحب از نگاه معنوی اتم انسان را تجزیه کرد و از طریق از او اجزایی که اناتومی معنوی حضرت انسان را تشکیل میده، او را بیرون نویس کرد و با ما شما برمغان گذاشت. به صورت مختصر 6 اصل با هم یک جا میشه و اناتومی معنوی حضرت انسان را تشکیل میده که هیچ کس از او خالی نیست و هیچ کس او را انکار کردن نمیتونه. هر یکی که از عزیزا که در اینجا تشریف دارن از این اصل ها خالی شدن نمیتونن. در مجموع این اصلها با هم یک جا دست به دست هم دیگه داده و وجود ظاهری و معنوی حضرت انسان را تکمیل میکنن. روح هست که در وجود انسان برای انسان حیات میبخشه. این عبارت از یک نیروست. نیرو به خود یک محرک ضرورت داره که از طریق از این محرک او تغذیه شوه. محرک از او عبارت از ملک است که همگیش در آیت قرآن در آیت متکاثره تذکر رفته. روح ما بدون ملک اصلا تغذیه شده نمیتونه. فالهمها فجورها و تقواها. الهامی که از طریق ملک برای انسان میاد در قلبش او باعث میشه که انسان تشویق شه به طرف کارهای خوب بگویه، خوب بکنه. حداقل یک نیت نیک در قلب خود باید بگیره و همگیش از برکت امواجی است که استاد پیشتر در روی انیمیشنش برای شما نشان داد. و اصل سوم عبارت از اصل نفس است. نفس هم مانند روح یک نیروست. این ضرورت داره با یک محرک از هم شیطان است که آیات بسیار زیاد در باره شیطان هم در قرآن نشان تذکر رفته. وظیفه از هم فقط است که چگونه انسان را تشویق بکنه به طرف کردن کار بد و چگونه انسان را وادار بسازه کار بد نکنه، حرف خوب نگویه. با الفاظی که فطرت انسانی و عقل انسانی این رو وادار میکنه که خوب کردن، خوب گفتن و خوب بودن یک چیز نیکوست. مگر چرا این کار را کردن نمیتونه؟ هر کس میخواد خوب باشه، مگر چرا ما خوب بودن نمیتونیم؟ اینجا خودش ثابت کننده از میست که یک نیروی است، یک کسی دیگه است در اندرون من. خسر دل ندارم کیست که من خاموشم و او در فغان و در غوغاست. انسان موجودی که همیشه در درون خود با تلاطم‌ها، با انقلابات گرفتار است، با بکن و مکن‌ها گرفتار است. این اصل‌ها را علامه صاحب تجزیه و تحلیل کرده و بسیار واضح ساخته بر ما را به او فرا میخونه و او را به ما معرفی میکنه تا با تثبیت و تشخیص از اونا نیرویی که ما را به طرف بدی میبره او رو تشخیص بکنیم و جلوگیری بکنیم. برعکس نیرویی که ما را به طرف خوبی میبره دوگام او رو تشویق بکنیم، سپورت بکنیم، ترغیب بکنیم که بیشتر به طرف خوبی بریم. و جالب است که این همه نیروها، این همه محرکین در یک نقطه، یعنی در پایتخت کشور وجود حضرت انسان اینا فعالیت میکنن که عبارت از قلب است. چنانچه اهمیت و ارزش قلب را بر مبنای آیات و احادیث رسول اکرم صلی الله علیه و سلم استاد معظم تشریح کردن. من نمیخوام به دراز بکشه. حداقل ما امیر فهمیدیم که مرکزی که پایتختی که در سرزمین وجود حضرت انسان قرار داره این نیروها همیشه در زد و بند هستند تا او را تسخیر بکنن. هر انسان را که ما میبینیم به طرف بدی میره حتما پایتخت وجودش که عبارت از قلبش است او تسخیر شده توسط شیطان. اگر میبینه که آدم خوب است حتما قلبش تسخیر شده توسط ملک و الهامات ملکی سرش همیشه جاری میباشه، طاری میباشه، حاکم میباشه، مثل که در انیمیشن شما دیدین. و این همه کارگردانی ها در قلب صورت میگیره. شما میبینید ما میگیم که دلم میخواد که فلانی جای برم، دلم میخواد فلانی را از بین ببرم، دلم میخواد با فلانی قطع رابطه بکنم. چرا نمیگیم مغز ما؟ چرا نمیگیم عقل ما؟ پس همه چیز از قلب سرچشمه میگیره که خودش تصدیق از جانب قرآن عظیم شان هم شده. و باز هم انیمیشن را که استاد معلم نشان دادن، ما شما در عصر زندگی میکنیم که عصر ساینس است، تکنیک است، تکنولوژی است. امی تلفن را که ما شما استفاده میکنیم عصر از ایده کجاست که خودش یک وسیله کوچک است. ستلایتی که در آسمان در اوجا در فضا معلق نباشه، از اوجا امواج نبیه، این راهنمایی نکنه. حداقل جی پی اس را که استفاده میکنیم یا در خانه خود نشستیم در تلویزیون چنل های مختلف مشاهده میکنیم. این تلویزیون خودش ظاهرا وایرلس است، با چیز ارتباط نداره. این امواج را از کجا میگیره؟ یک ستلایت دیگه در فضا در اوجا معلق است که از اوجا آنن و فانن به صورت جاری امواج برش میفرسته و آدیو ویژوال و امواج میگیره بر ما با تصویر میکشه. در این عصری که علامه صاحب با منطبق با مقتضیات زمان و با کشفیات و با اختراعات وقتی بر ما مکتب توحید را تشریح میکنه، آناتومی معنوی حضرت انسان را تشریح میکنه، it makes sense. واقعا بر ما قابل درک است که بله همین تلفن ما بدون موجودیت یک ستلایت در فضا که معلق است که هیچ چیز نیست. تلویزیونی که در خانه ما بسیار قیمتی هم باشه، اگر او از ستلایتی که از یک تلویزیون امواج میگیره با او ارتباط نداشته باشه، نه تصویر را من ببینم، نه کدام صوتی را میشنوم. پس او را ما قبول میکنیم که فرایند عقل انسان است، فرایند که خالق متعال جل جلاله در روح انسان مونده که از طریق از او ما میتونیم واقعا امواج فالهمها فجورها و تقواها یوسوس فی صدور الناس او را چرا منکر میشیم؟ در عصری که ما شما زندگی میکنیم عصری است که هر اختراع و هر اکتشاف را، هر پدیده های علمی را میتونیم کامپاتیبل بسازیم با مثال هایی که در قسمت معنویت و روحانیت میتونیم. و فقط نمونه از میره که یک چند تفکرم میگم از شما انشاءالله اجازه میگیرم. وقتی که علامه صاحب تفکر را اشاره میکنن، واژه‌ای که بر ما ناآشناسته، کسی تفکر میگه طرز تفکر است یا اندیشه است، اما در اینجا وقتی که 2500 آیات اشارات میشه در قرآن میشون از جانب خداوند متعال جل جلاله، واضح ما را دعوت میکنه فلینظر الانسان مما خلق. شما به طرف خلقت انسان تفکر نمیکنه، تعقل نمیکنه؟ یا وقتی که قبلا گفتم که در عصر ما شما زندگی میکنیم نهایت مصروف هستیم، آیا در پهلوی مصروفیت های ما اتو یک عبادت هم شده میتونه که از طریق از ما بتونیم بهترین و پر انرژی ترین انرژی معنوی را استخراج بکنیم؟ بله، اینمی خدمت را علامه صاحب کرده. وقتی ما در راه روان هستیم طرف مکتب، در راه روان هستیم طرف کار کردن خود، 4 فصل که 4 سناریوی زیبای خداوندی است، همیشه اگر 20 سال هستیم 20 بار همین 4 سناریو رو دیدیم که وقتی بهار میاد همه جا تازگی است، همه جا سبز است، همه جا از استشمام فضای گوارای بهار ما لذت میبریم. این بهاری که میآید در فصل قبلی از او که زمستان بود همه چیز مرده بود، این تازگی را، این تراوش را بر بهار کی داد؟ وقتی که خانه گل باشه پس روشن شه و ما میگیم یک دست به کار بود که روشن کرد. این زمینی که مرده بود، درختایی که فقط مثل چوب وارستاد بود، نه برگ داشت نه شکوفه داشت، این پر شکوفان کی ساخت؟ پر برگ کی ساخت؟ آیا انسان تعقل نمیکنه؟ امکان داره که خودش خود به خود شود؟ بعد از که فصل بهار به اتمام میرسه اسکیجول معین را که برای تعیین کرده، این کی تعیین کرده که بعد میبینیم تابستان می همه درختایی که از صبح تا شام به یک پای ایستاده بود فقط منتظر حضرت انسان بود، همه شاخه هایش اگر مثمر است بر ما شفتالو میته، زردالو میته، ناک میته، آلبالو میته. ما از خورش از او نه تنها لذت میبریم بلکه چیزی که مهم است در او جمال و کمال صالح جل رو در او پیدا میکنیم که به چی رنگ زیبا. یا مثلا گلی که در پیشرویتان شما میبینید، این گل به چی زیبایی در هر فصل بهار به میلیون ها همچون گل که رنگ های مرغوب داره، بوی خوش داره و با او را از طریق بویدن استشمام میکنیم، فرحت میبریم، از طریق دیدنش حتی ما لذت میبریم. نه تنهایی که در بیرون از وجود ما خداوند متعال جل جلاله این هستی بیکران را آراست با همه زیبایی ها، بلکه او آخذه هایی که از طریق از او ما میتونیم لذت ببریم او عبارت از 5 حس ما بود که او را هم فعال ساخت و برای ما صحت نگاه کرد. و فصل خزان که فصل میناتوری خداوند متعال جل جلاله یا فصل زیبایی هاست که هر برگی را ما میبینیم سبز بود. آله چگونه یک پرداس بسیار زیبا داده شده، پرداسی که آتشین است یا زرد است یا مایل به سرخی است. امو ذات غنی که والله غنی و انتم الفقراء به میلیون ها درخت خلق کرده بود و برای هر درخت بیش از 100 ها برگ داده بود و هر برگ در حقیقت یک فابریکه تمام عیار تولید اکسیژن بود که بر ما نهایت حیاتی است. چی ذات غنی است، چی ذات صمد است که وقتی که فصل خزان میشه میلیاردها برگ همگیش خشک میشه و به زمین میریزه و نابود میشه. برای فصل آینده برای هر درخت، برای هر شاخه، حتی شاخه های بیشتر ما برگ های تازه داریم. و نهایتش فصل 4 فصل زمستان است که در بعض جاها که سرد است در اونجا لحاف زیبای سپید رنگ برف در اونجا هموار میشه. این که در زیر از او چی تعاملات کیمیایی، فیزیکی و بیولوژیکی ادامه داره و درختایی که باید برای فصل آینده که عبارت از بهار است خود را آماده می‌سازند که ما باید آنچه که مورد ضرورت شاخه ما، شاخچه های ما، اگر درخت های مثمر است اون مواد را جمع بکنیم از جای دور توسط ریشه خود، فقط آماده باش هستند. ما با چشم دیدیم که وقتی پس فصل بهار میشه او اندازه رشدی که یک درخت میکنه در 3 ماه فصل بهار در 9 ماه آینده فصلهای آینده نمیکنه. این اسکیجول برزی کی داده بود، این آماده باشه برزی کی داده بود که طول 3 ماه فقط ما فکر میکردیم که استراحت بود، از بیرون هم تو فکر میکنم، اما در زیر ریشه هایش همه جانبه کار میکنه، مواد را ذخیره میکنه. بعد از اینکه بهار شد باز برای شاخه ها و اغصان و شاخچه های از او میفرسته که ما با چشم سر این میبینیم. آیا عبادت تفکر بهترین عبادت و لذت بخشترین عبادت نیست؟ آیا عبادت تفکر یگانه عبادت نیست که در عین حال هم غذای معنوی شده میتونه هم غذای مادی؟ غذایی که ما میخوریم خداوند گفته که آیا شما به طرف طعامتان نمیبینین؟ در عین حال که میخوریم از دیدن غذا پیش از که نوشجان بکنیم لذت میبریم، از استشمامش لذت میبریم، از جویدنش لذت میبریم. اگر امور سرش تفکر هم بکنیم که چی جمال و کمال در این کار گذاشته شده، هم بر ما غذای معنوی میشه و هم غذای مادی میشه. از توجهتان یک جان سپاس.
با سپاس بیکران از جناب محترم نصرت الله حامد بابت سخنان گهربار و ارزشمندشان. و حال از جناب صبور صد خواهشمند هستم تا بر روی استیج تشریف آورده و قطعنامه را به خوانش بگیره.
قدرمنو حاضرینو، تاسو ډیر په مینه د نن کنفرانس ټوله محتوا تر دې دقیقې پورې راورسوله، ټوله د فیض نه ډکه وه. دا دی د دې په پای کې تاسو ته د دې کنفرانس پریکړه لیک وړاندې کیږي. موږ د سولې، اتفاق، آزادۍ د غونډې کوونکي چې د لوی مکتبدار جناب عالی علامه فیضاني د اووم ځل بندي کېدلو د 49مې کلیزې د لمانځلو له امله د 2021 کال د دسمبر د میاشتې په 18مه نیټه د امریکا د کلفورنیا ایالت د فریمان په ښار کې جوړه شوې ده. په دې غونډه کې د علامه فیضاني لوړ افکار، د مبارزو سوابق او د هغه د شخصیت ټول اړخونه او د آزادي خواهي ولولې او د دې مبارز شخصیت د سوله ایز داعیه او نوښت ډکې کارنامې او له هر اړخه وارزول شولې او د دې ترڅنګ د علامه صاحب هغه داهیانه وړاندې او اندېښنې چې د هېواد د راتلونکي په اړه یې احساس کولې د ښاغلو ګډون کوونکو لخوا په ښه توګه وڅېړل شوې او رڼا پرې واچول شوه چې واقعا د هېواد نننۍ ستونزمن حالات د دې شاهد دي چې د وخت چارواکو، دیني علماو د هغوی خورا رغنده نظریاتو او وړاندیزونو ته پام ونه کړ. د دې امله هېواد د ښکېلاک په لومو کې پرېوت او زموږ ولس د استعمار د تودو وسلو د دوزخ په اور کې وسوځېد. د دې ترڅنګ په غونډه کې د ګران هېواد افغانستان په روانو حالاتو باندې هم خبرې وشوې او له اوسني بنبست څخه د هېواد د ژغورنې لپاره هم د امارت اسلامي چارواکو ته لازمې مشورې ورکړل شوې چې لاندې د څو مادو په ترڅ کې د غونډې ګډون کوونکو په لاندې توګه د غونډې پریکړه لیک اعلانوي. اول، د وطن د بېوسه او بېوزله قشر په هکله چې د خپلو ظلمو او فرصت طلبو د خپل ظالمو او فرصت طلبو د حرص او ناروا بندیزونو په نتیجه کې د اقتصاد ستونزو له کبله د کړاو سره مخامخ دي، باید چارواکي د اړوند ډلو سره ژر تر ژره د بحران د حل لارې چارې ولټوي او د مشکلاتو په رفع کولو کې اغیزمن ګامونه واخلي. دوهم، د امریکې د دولت او ادارې څخه غواړو چې د افغانستان پیسې د خپلو دلایلو پر مبنای کنګل کړي دي. د دې ځورېدلي ملت چې د سختو کړاوونو سره مخامخ دی د سیاسي ملحوظاتو په خطر ستونزې نه زیاتوي او د دې ناورین ته د زر تر زره د پای ټکی کېږدي. د اسلامي امارت چارواکي باید د اسلام د دین له اساساتو سره سم د قرآن کریم د دې حکم په اساس چې فرمایي ان الله یأمرکم ان تودوا الامانات الا اهلها واذا حکمتم بین الناس ان تحکموا بالعدل. کار خپل اهل کار ته وسپاري. څلورم، د ښځو زده کړه او په ټولنیزو کارونو کې د هغوی ونډه یو دینی اصل دی. نو د اسلامي امارت چارواکي باید د شریعت له حدودو سره سم هغوی ته د تحصیل لاره هواره کړي او نور حقونه خوندي کړي. پنځم، لکه چې د اسلامي امارت چارواکو د حکومت د تسلیمېدو په وخت کې تعهد کړی او عمومي عفو اعلان کړی وه چې ټول خلک به خوندي وي او له چا نه به غچ نه اخیستل کېږي. بنا پر دې پکار ده د اردو افسرانو، سربازانو او پخواني دولتي مامورینو ژوند او د هغوی حقوق خوندي او مسئولیت تضمین شي. او هغه کسان چې هغوی بې ځایه بندي کوي یا یې وژني باید قانون منګلو ته وسپاري او په دې توګه پر خپل تعهد او هوکړې عمل وکړي. شپږم، د امارت چارواکي باید مؤمن او منورو مسلکي کدرونو ته د هیواد په کارونو کې لویه ونډه ورکړي څو په دې وسیله یو معیاري حکومت منځته راشي او ټولو ته د مننې وړ او په نړیواله کچه ومنل شي. او د یو داسې قانوني حکومت په رامنځته کېدو سره افغانستان له نړیوال ګدایي څخه وژغورل شي او پر ځان اتکا پیدا کړي. اووم، همداراز د امارت چارواکي باید نړیوالې مرستې د خپلو خاصو کسانو په لاس ونه ویشي، بلکې په څرګنده توګه د رښتینو مسلکي ادارو له لارې خلکو ته ورسول شي څو د ولس او نړۍ ډاډ وړ وګرځي. ډېرو قدرمنو حاضرینو، دا وه د ننني کنفرانس وروستی پریکړه لیک. دا ستاسو رایګري ته وړاندې کیږي. هغه قدرمن ګډونوال او حاضرین چې د دې پریکړه لیک له ټولو مادو سره موافق دي، هیله من یو که زحمت نه ورته کیږي خپل لاس په پورته کړي. له نیکه مرغه زه خو داسې څوک نه وینم چې هغه به لاس نه وي پورته کړی. د تاسو ټولو نه مننه کوم. نو د ننني کنفرانس پریکړه لیک په اتفاق د آرا د تاسو درنو ګډون کوونکو لخوا تایید شو. هیله ده چې د ودان، کوسا، ښکلي او پرمختللي افغانستان شاهد اوسو. ومن الله توفیق.
جهان سپاس جناب استاد و از تمام حضار گرامی که سهم گرفتن. خدا اجر به حساب نصیبتان بگردانه و لحظاتی که با ما ماندین به اجر پاداش دارین نصیبتان بشه و قبول بکنه ان شاء الله. ان شاء الله در پایان برنامه رسیدیم. We are closing to our end of the program inshallah ta'ala very nicely. And jazakumullahu khairan kathiran kathira. With that, I'm going to ask our brother Muhammad to bless us with his beautiful voice and recite the dua. And at the end, I'm going to have a couple of words with everybody. Then I'll say goodbye to all of you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. سبحان ربك رب العزة أما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. آمين.